The council chamber was massive, carved from a single piece of crystalline stone that reflected light in every direction. Representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated sections, their forms varying from the insect-like Zenthari to the floating energy beings of the Velmar. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Velkara stood at the center podium, her blue skin shimmering under the lights. She was old, even by Zenthari standards, and had served on the Galactic Council for nearly 200 years. Her 4 arms gestured slowly as she spoke, a sign of careful consideration among her people. "The matter before us today is simple," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The Krindax Empire has requested permission to establish trade routes through Sector 7. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several representatives leaned forward in their seats. Others began speaking urgently to their aides. At the far end of the room, General Thexnor of the Krindax stood tall. His species was young by galactic standards, having only achieved space travel 300 years ago. But in that short time, they had built an impressive empire. The Krindax were warriors by nature, with thick gray skin that could withstand extreme temperatures and 4 powerful legs that made them formidable in ground combat. Thexnor wore the medals of 40 successful campaigns across his chest. "I see no reason for concern," Thexnor said, his voice deep and confident. "Sector 7 appears mostly empty on all star charts. My people simply wish to cut travel time between our colonies. We mean no offense to anyone." The chamber fell silent. Velkara looked around at the other council members. One by one, they shook their heads or made negative gestures in their own ways. High Priestess Mir Allah of the Velmar spoke next. Her form was hard to look at directly, shifting between solid and energy states. "Young Thexnor, we cannot grant this request. Sector 7 is closed to all traffic. This has been law for 60 years. "But why?" Thexnor demanded. "What could possibly be in that sector that frightens so many great civilizations? The charts show only a few dozen systems, most barely developed." An elderly Thurian named Kern spoke up from his seat. The Thurians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, existing for nearly 50,000 years. Kern's scaled face was weathered with age. "Those systems belong to the humans, and no one enters human space without their explicit permission." Thexnor laughed, though he tried to hide it. "Humans? The species that only made contact 2 generations ago? Surely you cannot be serious? My scientists have studied their technology. They are decades behind most of us in certain areas." Velkara's expression hardened. "General, you do not understand. This is not a matter of technology. This is a matter of survival." "Survival?" Thexnor looked around the chamber, confused. "Are you telling me that all of you, species that have existed for thousands of years, are afraid of these newcomers? The Zenthari Empire has 5,000 worlds. The Cortesh Collective has weapons that can crack planets. The Velmar can manipulate space and time itself, and yet you fear humans?" No one answered immediately. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Velkara spoke again. "We do not fear them in the way you think, General. We respect them. There is a difference, and that respect was earned through experience we do not wish to repeat." "Then explain it to me," Thexnor said. "Tell me what happened. Make me understand why my proud species should fear traveling through empty space." The council members looked at each other. Some seemed to be having a silent conversation. After a long moment, Velkara shook her head. "We cannot," she said simply. "The details are classified by treaty. What I can tell you is this: 60 years ago, mistakes were made, wars were fought, and humanity showed us something we had never seen before. When it was over, we agreed, all of us, that human space would be respected. No ships would enter without permission. No trade routes would cross their territory. This was not their demand. It was our decision. Thexnor felt anger rising in his chest. You treat my people like children. You tell us there is danger but refuse to explain. How can we respect a law we do not understand? Kern stood slowly, his old body creaking. Because some lessons are too painful to teach twice, young general. We tell you this as a kindness. Do not test the humans. Do not cross their borders. Do not mistake their silence for weakness or their distance for inability to act. Is this a threat? Thexnor asked. No, Mirala said, her energy form pulsing slowly. It is a warning. There is a reason human space is marked as Quarantine Zone 7 on every map. There is a reason no pirate has ever attacked a human colony. There is a reason no empire has ever tried to conquer even one of their worlds. We are trying to protect you from learning these reasons the hard way. Thexnor looked around the chamber one final time. Every species represented there, from the youngest to the oldest, showed the same expression. It was not fear, exactly. It was something else. Something that looked almost like respect mixed with caution. Fine, Thexnor said finally. We will find another route for our trade ships. He bowed formally and began to leave the chamber. But as he walked away, his mind was already working. His species had not built an empire by following rules they did not understand. The Council was hiding something. And Thexnor intended to find out what. If these humans were really so dangerous, he needed to know why. And if they were not, if this was just elder species trying to control younger ones, then the Kryndax would not be intimidated. He made his decision before he even left the building. He would send scouts into human space, just a small ship, fast and stealthy. They would observe and report back. What harm could come from simply looking? Behind him, Velkara watched the general leave. She turned to Kieran and Mirala. He will not listen, she said quietly. No, Kieran agreed. The young never do. Should we warn the humans? Mirala asked. Velkara considered this. No. They will already know the moment any ship crosses their border. They always know. We can only hope that General Thexnor's people survive the lesson they are about to learn. The council chamber slowly emptied, but the weight of what was coming hung in the air like a storm about to break. 3 weeks had passed since the council meeting. General Thexnor stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the main display screen. A small dot moved across the star chart, getting closer to the boundary line that marked human space. Report, Thexnor ordered. Commander Zarkoth appeared on the communication screen. He was aboard the scout ship Blade Runner, specially designed for stealth operations. We are 10 minutes from the border, General. All systems are functioning perfectly. No signs of detection. Thexnor nodded. Remember, you are only to observe. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Take sensor readings, map their patrol patterns, and return. We need information, not a war. Understood, General. Zarkoth seemed confident, perhaps too confident. Our stealth technology is the best in the Kryndax fleet. They will never know we were there. The communication ended. Thexnor watched as the small dot crossed the borderline on his display. He felt a moment of doubt, remembering the faces of the council members, the warning in their voices, but he pushed it aside. Knowledge was power, and his people needed to know what threat, if any, these humans actually posed. On the Blade Runner, Zarkoth was feeling pleased with himself. The ship had crossed into human space without incident. His sensors showed several planets ahead, some with clear signs of civilization, but there were no patrol ships visible. No defense stations, nothing that suggested any kind of military presence. They leave their borders completely undefended, his tactical officer said, sounding surprised. This makes no sense. Perhaps the Council was lying, Zarkoth suggested. Perhaps they want to keep younger species away from valuable resources in this sector. He guided the ship deeper into human territory, heading toward what looked like a small colony world. His sensors picked up ships in orbit, but they appeared to be civilian vessels, cargo haulers, and passenger transports. Nothing military. Then a voice came through the communication system, speaking perfect Krindax. "Attention, unidentified vessel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Frigate Liberty's Watch. You have entered human space without permission. We recommend you turn around immediately. This is your only warning." Zarkoth jumped in his seat. His sensors showed nothing. No ships, no energy signatures, nothing. "Where is he?" he demanded of his crew. "I don't know, sir. There is nothing on our sensors." Zarkoth cleared his throat and opened a channel. "This is Commander Zarkoth of the Krindax Empire. We are simply passing through. We mean no harm." There was a pause. Then Captain Morrison's voice came back, and this time it sounded tired, almost sad. "Commander, you need to leave, right now. Turn your ship around and go back the way you came. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Zarkoth felt anger replace his initial shock. Who was this human to tell him what to do? The Krindax had conquered 40 systems. They were warriors, not cowards who ran from invisible threats. "We will leave when we are ready," Zarkoth said firmly. "And not before." Another pause. Then Morrison spoke again, and his voice had changed. It was colder now, professional. "So be it. Liberty's Watch. Defensive protocols engaged." Suddenly, Zarkoth's sensors lit up. A ship appeared on his screen, directly ahead. It had been there the whole time, somehow invisible to their advanced scanning systems. The ship was smaller than the Blade Runner, but something about its design made Zarkoth nervous. "Power up weapons," he ordered. "Target that ship." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? They gave us a warning. We could still leave." "Do it!" The Blade Runner's weapons systems came online. They locked onto the human ship and fired. A bright beam of energy shot across space. The Liberty's Watch's shields absorbed the blast easily. The ship did not even move. "Interesting," Morrison's voice came through again. "You fired first. That makes this a lot simpler for my report." Before Zarkoth could respond, the human ship returned fire. But it did not aim to destroy. A single, precise shot hit the Blade Runner's weapon systems, disabling them instantly without damaging anything else. The accuracy was terrifying. "What just happened?" Zarkoth shouted. "Weapons are offline, sir. They hit our targeting computer directly. It should have been impossible to target something so specific." Zarkoth felt cold fear creeping into his chest. "Get us out of here! Maximum speed!" But before his pilot could engage the engines, 3 more ships appeared on sensors. They had been there all along, surrounding the Blade Runner in a perfect triangle formation. All of them were now visible, their stealth systems disengaged. A woman's voice came through the communication system. "Commander Zarkoth, this is Lieutenant Amy Collins, Tactical Officer of the Liberty's Watch. We have been tracking your ship since you crossed our border 27 minutes ago. We allowed you to continue because Captain Morrison thought you might turn back on your own. That was optimistic of him." Zarkoth said nothing. His crew was staring at their screens in shock. "You entered our space without permission," Collins continued. "You ignored our warning. You opened fire on a human vessel. Any one of these actions could justify us destroying your ship. All 3 together would make it an open and shut case in Galactic Court." "Then why haven't you?" Zarkoth found his voice. Captain Morrison answered this time. "Because we don't want to kill anyone today, Commander. We just want you to leave and take a message back to whoever sent you." "What message?" "That the Galactic Council was right. Tell them that human space is protected not by walls or weapons, but by something else. Tell them we could have destroyed your ship the moment you crossed our border. Tell them we chose not to, because we are not interested in starting wars. But tell them also that we are very good at finishing them." Zarkoth felt his legs shaking. He had fought in dozens of battles, faced death many times, but this was different. The humans had been playing with them the whole time. They had let the Blade Runner enter their space, had tracked them invisibly, had waited to see what they would do. And when Zarkoth had made the wrong choice, they had demonstrated their capability without killing anyone. It was the restraint that frightened him most. These humans could have simply destroyed the Blade Runner without warning. Instead, they had given chances, had shown mercy even after being fired upon. That meant they were confident. That meant they did not fear the Kryndax or any retaliation. "We are leaving," Zarkoth said quietly. "Smart choice," Morrison replied. "Your engines are still functional. You have a clear path back to the border. Take it." The Blade Runner turned and began moving away from the human ships. Zarkoth expected them to follow, to escort them out. But the four ships simply disappeared from sensors again, vanishing as completely as they had before. "Are they still there?" he asked his sensor officer. "I have no idea, sir. I cannot detect anything." As the Blade Runner crossed back over the border into Kryndax space, Zarkoth realized that the humans could probably still see them. They were probably watching right now, making sure the scouts actually left. The thought made his skin crawl. When they were finally safe in Kryndax territory, Zarkoth opened a channel to General Thexnor. "General, we need to talk. The Council was not lying. The humans are dangerous, very dangerous." Back in human space, Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair aboard the Liberty's watch, watching the Kryndax ship disappear from his screens. His tactical officer, Amy Collins, looked over at him. "Think they learned their lesson?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "Maybe, but probably not. There will be more. There always are." He pulled up a report template and began typing. Another incident, another warning given, another species that thought they could test human resolve. It was becoming routine. Amy brought up the stealth systems again, making the Liberty's watch and its escort ships invisible once more. "Should we report this to command?" "Already done. They will inform the Galactic Council. Maybe this time it will stick." Jake did not sound optimistic. The ships resumed their patrol, watching the border, waiting for the next curious species to cross the line and learn why no one enters human space uninvited. General Thexnor sat in his private office, watching the recording for the 5th time. Commander Zarkoth had sent everything, every sensor reading, every communication, every moment of the encounter with the human ships. Each time Thexnor watched it, he felt more confused and more frustrated. The Kryndax were warriors. They understood strength, understood power. But this was something different. The humans had not behaved like any military force he had ever encountered. They had shown mercy when they could have shown dominance. They had given warnings when they could have simply destroyed. It made no sense. A chime sounded at his door. "Enter," Thexnor called. An elderly Thurian walked in, moving slowly with the help of a walking stick. This was Kieran, the same council member who had warned Thexnor at the meeting weeks ago. The general had sent him a message requesting a private conversation. "You came?" Thexnor said, surprised. Kern settled into a chair with a sigh. "You were going to keep digging until you found answers. I decided it was better to tell you the truth than let you stumble into it on your own." He looked at the frozen image on Thexnor's screen. "I see you have already had your first lesson. They could have destroyed my ship." "Yes, but they did not." "No." Kern studied the general's face. "And that frightens you more than if they had, does it not?" Thexnor did not answer immediately. Finally, he nodded. "A warrior who kills you is predictable. A warrior who spares you when they could kill you is not. It means they are thinking beyond the immediate battle. It means they have plans you cannot see." "Exactly." Kern tapped his walking stick against the floor. You begin to understand. But you do not yet know the full story. What I am about to tell you is not classified anymore, not officially. But most species have chosen to forget it, to bury it in archives where young warriors will not find it and do something foolish. He paused. Like you did. Tell me, Thexnor said. Kieran began to speak, and Thexnor listened to a story that changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. 60 years ago, humanity had been new to the galactic community. Their first ships had been slow and primitive compared to the vessels of older species. They had reached out with friendship, with curiosity, with hope. At that same time, two of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations were at war. The Velmar and the Cortesh had been fighting for 300 years over a territory dispute. Billions had died. Entire star systems had been destroyed. Every attempt at peace had failed because neither side would admit weakness. A human exploration ship called the Pathfinder had been traveling through what humans thought was empty space. They did not know they were entering a war zone. The ship was small, carrying only 127 people, including families and children. It was a colony ship, looking for new worlds to settle. The Velmar detected the Pathfinder and assumed it was a Cortesh vessel in disguise. They fired without warning. The human ship had no military shields, no weapons, no way to defend itself. It was destroyed instantly. Everyone aboard died. When news reached Earth, the human government tried to make contact with the Velmar to understand what had happened. They sent messages, requested meetings, asked for explanations. The Velmar ignored them completely. The Cortesh also ignored them, assuming the humans were allied with the Velmar since a Velmar ship had killed humans. The human president at the time was a man named Ryan Fletcher. He sent one final message to both civilizations, a message that was broadcast on every channel impossible to ignore. You have 48 hours to cease all hostilities and explain yourselves. If you do not, we will respond. Both the Velmar and the Cortesh laughed at this message. Who were these humans to threaten them? They were ancient civilizations with millions of warships and weapons that could destroy planets. Humanity had been in space for barely 50 years. 48 hours later, the galaxy learned what humanity was capable of. Human fleets appeared simultaneously at 17 major military installations across both empires. These were not civilian targets. These were command centers, weapons factories, shipyards, and military academies. The attacks were perfectly coordinated, happening at the exact same moment across hundreds of light years. The destruction was precise and complete. Every target was eliminated with such accuracy that military capabilities were removed, but civilian areas nearby were untouched. In some cases, human weapons struck so precisely that they destroyed one building in a complex while leaving the building next to it completely undamaged. The message was clear and terrifying. We can reach you anywhere. We can strike with absolute precision. We chose not to kill civilians. Do not make us change that choice. The war between the Velmar and the Cortesh ended within a week. Both sides sued for peace, not with each other, but with humanity first. They agreed to pay reparations for the Pathfinder crew. They agreed to the establishment of a buffer zone around human space. They agreed to never, under any circumstances, enter human territory without permission. The rest of the galaxy watched and learned. Humanity had gone from unknown newcomers to a force that had defeated two superpowers in 48 hours. But what terrified everyone was not the victory itself. It was how the humans had won. They had been watching, Karn explained to Thexnor. For weeks, maybe months, human ships had been invisibly observing both empires. They mapped every military asset, studied every tactic, learned every weakness. When they struck, it was not with rage or anger. It was with cold, calculated precision. Thexnor felt cold. How is that possible? Both empires had technology centuries ahead of humanity. Technology is not everything, Kieran said. Humanity evolved on a planet they call Earth. By our standards, Earth is what we would classify as a death world. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, regular natural disasters. Most species evolve on stable planets where survival is predictable. Humans evolved in chaos. What difference does that make? It made them adaptable. Human soldiers can fight in any environment. Human ships can operate in conditions that would destroy our vessels. Human tactics are unpredictable because they do not follow the logical patterns we have developed over thousands of years of civilization. They think differently than we do. Kern stood slowly, looking at the frozen image on Thexnor's screen. But there is something else, something even more important. Humans have restraint. They could have killed everyone on your scout ship. They could have destroyed both the Velmar and Cortesh empires completely, but they chose not to. They understand that true strength is knowing when not to use your full power. Why did no one tell me this? Thexnor asked, his voice quiet. Because we hoped you would never need to know. We hoped that by simply marking human space as forbidden, younger species would respect the boundary. But curiosity and pride are powerful forces. Kern moved toward the door, then stopped. General, humanity does not want to conquer anyone. They do not want to rule the galaxy. They just want to be left alone. But if you push them, if you threaten them, they will respond. And when they do, it will be fast, precise, and overwhelming. Learn from your mistake. Do not make it again. After Kern left, Thexnor sat in silence for a long time. He thought about the confident way Zarkov had crossed the border. He thought about how easily the humans had tracked them, how they had been invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. He thought about the precision of that single shot that had disabled the Blade Runner's weapons without harming the crew. Most of all, he thought about the mercy. The humans could have killed them all. Instead, they had taught a lesson. Thexnor made a decision. He would return to the Galactic Council. He would apologize formally. And he would make sure that every Kryndax ship captain knew the truth about why human space was forbidden. Not because humans were monsters, but because they were something the galaxy had never seen before. Warriors who chose peace, but were always ready for war. The meeting room was smaller than the Grand Council chamber, more private. General Thexnor had requested this conversation with Ambassador Velkara alone, and she had agreed. They sat across from each other at a simple table, with no aides, no recording devices, just two individuals trying to understand each other. "I owe you an apology," Thexnor began. "You tried to warn me, and I did not listen." Velkara's four arms moved in a gesture that meant acceptance among her people. "You are not the first to test the boundaries, General. You will not be the last. At least your people survived the lesson. Kern told me about the Pathfinder, about the war that followed. But I still do not fully understand. How can one species be so different? What makes humans so effective?" Velkara was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "What I am about to tell you comes from decades of study, from human scientists who shared their knowledge with us, and from my own observations. Humanity is unique in the galaxy for three main reasons." She held up one finger. First, adaptability. Most species in the galaxy evolved on planets with stable ecosystems. The Zenthari come from a world of endless oceans, warm and predictable. The Cortesh evolved in caves with constant temperature and humidity. The Thurians developed on a planet with almost no seasonal changes. We are all specialists, General. We thrive in specific conditions. And humans? Humans come from a planet that tried to kill them at every opportunity. Earth has deserts that reach 60 degrees and ice caps that drop to -50. It has hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and tsunamis. Animals evolved there that could kill a human with a single bite or sting. And yet, humans not only survived, they spread across their entire planet. They learned to live in every environment. Velkara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. When humans came to space, they brought that adaptability with them. They colonized worlds we would never even consider, ice planets, desert worlds, high-gravity systems that would crush most species. They do not need perfect conditions. They make any conditions work. Thexnor thought about this. The Krindaks had strict requirements for colonization. Temperature ranges, gravity levels, atmospheric composition. Humans apparently had none of these limitations. Second, Velkara continued, persistence. Do you know what a persistence predator is, General? No. On Earth, most predators use speed or strength to catch their prey. They sprint, they ambush, they overpower. But humans evolved differently. They would track an animal for days, following it relentlessly. The animal would run, would rest, would run again. But the humans never stopped. Eventually, the animal would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would catch it. She turned back to face Thexnor. Humans brought this trait to warfare. They do not stop, ever. If you fight them and win, they learn from the defeat and come back stronger. If you fight them and lose, they will pursue you. If you run, they will follow. There is no discouraging them, no breaking their will. The Velmar and Cortesh learned this the hard way. They expected humans to be intimidated by their power. Instead, humanity responded with devastating force and did not stop until both empires sued for peace. Thexnor felt a chill. The Krindaks prided themselves on their warrior spirit, but even they knew when to retreat. The idea of an enemy that never retreated, never gave up, was deeply unsettling. Third, Velkara said, sitting back down, and perhaps most important, is what humans call pack bonding. Most species form connections with their own kind. Some, like my people, have strong family units. Others, like the Cortesh, have tribal structures, but humans bond with everything. Everything? Everything. They bond with other species, with animals, with robots and artificial intelligence. They even bond with their ships, their vehicles, their weapons. They give them names, talk to them as if they were alive. To a human, anything can become part of their pack, their family. And they are fiercely, violently protective of their family. Velkara's voice became serious. The Pathfinder was not just a ship to humanity. Those 127 people were not just casualties, they were family. Fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, friends and loved ones. When the Velmar destroyed that ship, they did not just attack human military capability, they attacked the human family. And humanity responded the way any protective family member would respond when someone hurts their own. But they showed restraint, Thexnor said. They did not kill civilians. They could have destroyed both empires completely. Yes. And that brings me to the fourth trait, the one that makes humanity truly unique. Velkara leaned forward. Humans understand that with great power comes great responsibility. They have a concept they call proportional response. They will match your aggression, but rarely exceed it unless forced to. She gestured to a screen on the wall, bringing up an image of Earth. Look at their history, General. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet multiple times over. They came very close to extinction through their own warfare. But they learned. They developed rules of war, codes of conduct, treaties and agreements to prevent total destruction. They learned that winning was not enough. They had to win in a way that left something worth having afterward. So they hold back, Thexnor said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. They hold back, Velkara confirmed. When your scout ship entered their space, they could have destroyed it instantly. Instead, they warned you. When it fired on them, they could have returned fire with lethal force. Instead, they disabled your weapons. They taught a lesson rather than seeking revenge. This is what makes them truly dangerous, General. Not their weapons or their tactics, but their judgment. Thexanor sat back, processing everything. You fear them because they think before they act. We respect them because they think before they act, Velkara corrected. Fear would be simpler. Fear is something we understand. But respect for a species that could dominate the galaxy but chooses not to, that requires us to fundamentally change how we view power itself. She pulled up another image, this one showing the human diplomatic vessel that had arrived at the council chambers after the Pathfinder incident. When President Fletcher sent that final message, when he gave the Velmar and Cortesh 48 hours to respond, do you know what humanity was doing during that time? Thexnor shook his head. They were debating. The human government was divided. Some wanted immediate retaliation. Others wanted to wait, to give peace a chance. President Fletcher himself spent those 48 hours trying to find a solution that did not involve violence. He was hoping, right up until the last moment, that the Velmar and Cortesh would respond with reason. But they did not. No. And so humanity went to war. But even in war, they maintained their rules. No civilian targets, no unnecessary destruction, no revenge attacks. They fought to end the conflict as quickly as possible with the minimum loss of life. That level of discipline, that ability to be angry and violent and still maintain moral boundaries is something the galaxy had never seen before. Velkara stood again, preparing to leave. That is why we do not enter human space, General. Not because we fear their weapons, but because we fear what would happen if we forced them to abandon their restraint. A human who has decided that restraint no longer matters, who has been pushed beyond their moral boundaries, is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. And none of us ever want to see that again. Thexnor remained seated after Velkara left, staring at the image of Earth on the screen. A blue and green planet, beautiful and deadly, home to the most unusual species the galaxy had ever encountered. He thought about his own people, about Krindak's honor and warrior pride. They had always believed that strength meant never backing down, never showing mercy. But humanity had shown him a different kind of strength, the strength to hold back, the strength to choose peace even when you were capable of total war. It was a lesson the Krindaks needed to learn, and Thexanor was determined to teach it to his people so that they would never make the same mistake he had made. The Galactic Council chamber was full once again, but the atmosphere was different from the last time General Thexnor had stood before them. This time, he was not demanding answers or challenging their authority. This time he came with humility and understanding. Honored members of the Council, Thexnor began, his voice carrying across the Great Hall. I come before you to formally apologize for my actions. I disregarded your warnings. I sent ships into human space without permission. I put my people at risk because of pride and stubbornness. Ambassador Velkara watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. But I also come with a request, Thexnor continued. The Krindak's empire wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. We have learned our lesson, and we wish to learn more. If the humans will accept us, we want to be their allies. A murmur went through the chamber. Several council members looked surprised. It was rare for a warrior species like the Krindaks to seek alliance rather than simply trade agreements. High Priestess Mirala spoke, her energy form pulsing gently. The humans have been informed of your request. They have agreed to a meeting. A diplomatic vessel is waiting at the border of their space to escort you to their world called New Terra. Thexnor felt both relief and nervousness. I will go personally. 2 days later, Thexnor stood on the bridge of a Krindak's diplomatic ship as they approached the border. His crew was tense, remembering what had happened to the Blade Runner. But this time there would be no stealth, no tricks. They had announced their arrival and their peaceful intentions. As they crossed into human space, a ship appeared on their sensors. It was not trying to hide. The Liberty's watch moved into position alongside them, and a familiar voice came through the communication system. "General Thexnor, this is Captain Jake Morrison. Welcome to human space. I will be your escort to New Terra." "Captain Morrison," Thexnor replied. "I believe we met under less pleasant circumstances." There was a hint of amusement in Jake's voice. "That we did. But I am glad to see you are taking a different approach this time. Follow my course and we will have you at New Terra in 3 hours." The journey was smooth and uneventful. Thexnor spent the time looking at the human colonies they passed. He saw settlements on planets that looked completely inhospitable, ice worlds where the temperature never rose above freezing, desert planets with barely any water, even a station built inside an asteroid field that would be suicide for most species to navigate. Velkara had been right. Humans could live anywhere. New Terra itself was beautiful. It was a planet similar to Earth, with blue oceans and green continents. But it was also practical, with orbital stations and defense platforms that made it clear this was a well-protected world. They landed at a diplomatic facility, and Thexnor was greeted by a tall woman in a military uniform. She had gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through him. "General Thexnor, I am Admiral Lisa Grant, head of Human Diplomatic Defense Forces. Welcome to New Terra." "Thank you for seeing me, Admiral." "Walk with me," Lisa said, gesturing toward a building. "There is someone who wants to meet you." Inside, they entered a comfortable room with windows overlooking a garden. A man in civilian clothes stood by the window. He turned as they entered and smiled warmly. "General Thexnor, I am Dr. Ben Carter, Humanity's chief xenodiplomat. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss." Thexnor sat, feeling slightly off balance. He had expected more military presence, more formality. Instead, these humans seemed relaxed, almost casual. "I will be direct, Dr. Carter," Thexnor said. "I came here to apologize and to understand. My people are warriors. We respect strength. But your strength is different from anything we have encountered, and it confuses us." Ben nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty. Let me try to explain our philosophy. Humans have a saying: we judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. For a long time, that created problems. We expected others to understand our good intentions while we judged them harshly for their actions. And now? Now we try to do better. We try to judge everyone, including ourselves, by their intentions when possible. We try to understand why someone acts before we respond." Admiral Lisa spoke up. "When your scout ship entered our space, we knew immediately. Our sensors tracked you from the moment you crossed the border. We could have destroyed you without warning, but Captain Morrison made a choice. He chose to warn you first, to give you a chance to leave peacefully." "Why?" Thexnor asked. "By military logic, you should have eliminated the threat." "Because we have learned that military logic is not always the best logic," Ben explained. "Yes, we could have destroyed your ship. But then what? Your empire would have demanded explanations. Others might have thought we were aggressive, might have formed alliances against us. Violence would have led to more violence." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "We do not want to be the galaxy's police force, General. We do not want to conquer anyone. We just want to live in peace. But we have learned that peace requires strength, and strength requires wisdom to know when to use it and when to hold back." "Ambassador Velkara told me about the Pathfinder," Thexnor said quietly. "About what happened and how humanity responded." Lisa's expression hardened. "The Pathfinder taught us a painful lesson. We were naive when we first entered the galaxy. We thought everyone would be peaceful, would respect each other. We learned that we needed to be prepared to defend ourselves." But we also learned that we needed to be careful about how we use that power. You showed restraint even after your people were killed. We showed restraint because of our people being killed, Ben corrected. Those 127 people died because we were not prepared. But we did not want their deaths to lead to more deaths. So we responded with precisely the amount of force needed to end the conflict, nothing more. Captain Jake Morrison entered the room at that moment, having finished his patrol duties. He nodded to the others and took a seat. Captain, Thexnor said, I must ask you something. When my ship fired on you, you could have destroyed us. Why did you only disable our weapons? Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because I have seen what happens when good people are not prepared to defend themselves. The Pathfinder taught us that lesson. But I have also seen what happens when people use more force than necessary. It creates cycles of revenge, of hatred, of endless war. He looked directly at Thexnor. You fired on us because you were scared and confused. You made a bad decision, but you did not deserve to die for it. So I made a different choice. I chose to teach rather than to kill. And now you are here, asking questions and trying to understand. That means my choice was the right one. Thexnor felt something shift inside him. These humans were not what he had expected. They were not conquerors or tyrants. They were not even particularly interested in showing off their power. They were just people who had learned hard lessons and were trying to make better choices. The Krindaks want to be your allies, Thexnor said formally. We want to learn from you. We have much to offer in return, but more importantly, we have much to learn. Ben smiled. We would be honored to have the Krindaks as allies. But I should warn you, General, being allied with humanity comes with responsibilities. We will expect you to uphold the same principles we try to follow. Restraint when possible, force only when necessary. Respect for all species, not just the strong ones. We accept these terms, Thexnor said without hesitation. Over the next several hours, they worked out the details of a formal alliance. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, mutual defense pacts. It was the beginning of something new for both species. As Thexnor prepared to leave, Admiral Lisa walked him to his ship. General, there is something you should know. The Galactic Council will be holding a special session next week. They are going to officially recognize humanity as a protected sovereign power. What does that mean? It is a designation that has not been used in 10,000 years. It means that human space is recognized as absolutely sovereign. It means that any attack on humanity will be considered an attack on the entire galactic community. It means we have finally earned the respect we have been seeking. Thexnor smiled, showing his teeth in the Krindak's expression of approval. It is well deserved, Admiral. Your species has taught the galaxy something important. What is that? That true strength is not about how much damage you can do. It is about how much damage you choose not to do. As his ship lifted off from New Terra, Thexnor looked back at the planet below. The humans had given him more than just an alliance. They had given him a new understanding of what it meant to be strong. Back on the Liberty's watch, Jake Morrison resumed his patrol of the border. His sensors picked up another ship approaching human space, this one from a species he did not recognize. He sighed and opened a communication channel. Attention, unidentified vessel. You have entered human space. We recommend you turn around. This is your only warning. The ship immediately changed course and retreated. Jake smiled slightly. Word was spreading. The galaxy was learning. And perhaps, he thought, that was the most important victory of all. Not winning through force, but winning through respect. Not being feared, but being understood. The stars stretched out before him, full of possibilities. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or victims, but as equals, as a species that understood both the necessity of strength and the wisdom of restraint. The cycle would continue. There would always be someone new who tested the boundaries, who wanted to know why human space was forbidden. But each time, the humans would give the same warnings, make the same choices, teach the same lessons, because that was what made them human. Not their weapons or their technology, but their determination to be better, to choose peace when possible, and war only when necessary. And now, finally, the galaxy understood why no species stepped into human space uninvited. Not because they could not, but because they had learned it was wiser not to try.